The truth is, I sold my house. My brother-in-law, Kevin, said this, and my husband and I were shocked, stunned into silence. The person most shocked of all was my mother-in-law. Why? Why would you do such a thing? Weren't you supposed to come pick me up? She asked, visibly upset, confronting Kevin. Calm down, Kevin said, trying to pacify her. He began to explain why he did it. My name is Sandra. I work remotely with my husband, Robert. The peaceful work environment, where we could take breaks whenever we wanted, satisfied both of us. Then, my mother-in-law came to live with us. We were financially stable, so we didn't have any complaints. But then she'd say, "Why aren't you two going out to work?" She'd look at us disapprovingly as she spoke. I felt exhausted by her words, as if the same argument was starting all over again. When my mother-in-law first questioned us like this, we explained that we were working remotely. But she'd snap, "Aren't you just playing around?" I've told Robert the same thing. Are you listening? When will you two start working properly? Aren't you thinking about your future? My mother-in-law refused to understand our jobs. Oh, I'm so worried, she'd say. I wonder if I made a mistake coming to this house. I should have gone to Kevin's house. She'd often sigh and mutter this. The Kevin she mentioned is Robert's brother. He married a wealthy woman named Carol, who he met somewhere, and now he seems to be living off her wealth. My mother-in-law wasn't informed about this. Kevin asked us not to tell her. Kevin's house isn't a small one like this. It's very large, like a foreign castle. Well, I'm planning to move to Kevin's house eventually, which will become my home, my mother-in-law would say, waiting for Kevin to come get her. We knew that day would never come. Kevin and his wife would never pick her up. That's because Robert once suggested to his brother, who his mother dotes on, that she could live with him. However, Kevin refused to live with his mother. So, we ended up living together. Even though we were called unemployed for doing remote work, we resigned ourselves to the fact that that's just how she is. But then, an incident occurred that made it impossible for us to continue tolerating it. Out of the blue, we got a call from Kevin. I'll be coming over this weekend, he said, and without waiting for a response, he hung up. What do we do? That guy hasn't changed a bit, Robert and I said, baffled. Overhearing our conversation, my mother-in-law leaned in, looking delighted. He's coming to pick me up. Please help me prepare to move, she said, dragging Robert off to her room. Robert looked troubled. Mom, Kevin's not coming to pick you up. He probably called because something happened, he said. She snorted, clearly unconvinced. That can't be true. But he didn't say anything about picking you up on the phone, right? Robert pressed. He just didn't say it, Robert. I'm so tired of this house. You're probably hoping to make me a housekeeper, but that's not going to happen, she replied. We couldn't understand why she was having such paranoid thoughts. Since she came to our house, she got up whenever she wanted, didn't do any housework, and lived off the pocket money we gave her. Well, we weren't going to force her to stay, so we did as she asked, packed her bags, and waited for Kevin to arrive. Over the weekend, my brother-in-law and his wife arrived at our place. As soon as they entered our home, they had suspiciously ingratiating expressions on their faces. I had a bad feeling. Just then, my mother-in-law emerged with sparkling eyes. You finally arrived. Listen here, Sandra is totally inept at house chores, so I have to do them, and Robert completely ignores me. Isn't that terrible? She said with a victim-like expression, pushing past Robert to welcome her brother into our home. You guys don't mistreat Mom, Kevin said. There's no way we're doing that. We're giving her an allowance, and she's eating whatever she likes. Plus, Sandra is handling the house chores, Robert said with a complicated expression. But Kevin just looked suspicious. Robert has always been a bit clueless, probably treating Mom badly without even realizing it. And it seems Sandra isn't the considerate type. That's right. Kevin really understands me, my mother-in-law chimed in. Hearing this conversation, Robert and I couldn't help but scowl. Despite this, we decided to entertain our guests and led the couple to the living room. We all sat around the table, with Robert and me on one side and the couple on the other. Now, what are you sitting around for? Serve the tea, my mother-in-law demanded. Huh? I thought you were going to make the tea, mother-in-law. What are you saying, making an old woman work? You see, Kevin, Sandra is this kind of person, she added, even starting to fake cry. At that point, I was so stunned by her behavior that I didn't even feel like retorting. Once I had served the tea, the couple became solemn. The truth is, we sold our house, Kevin said. Robert and I were surprised and shocked at Kevin's words. The one who took the biggest shock was my mother-in-law. Why? Why would you do something like that? Didn't you come to pick me up? She asked, flustered, confronting Kevin. He tried to calm her down, saying, easy, easy, and began to explain. We've been in debt, and though we could repay the debt by selling the house, we're broke and have nowhere to live. So, we came to discuss if we could stay here. What debt? My mother-in-law asked. I was trying to start a business, but it didn't go well. Well, that happens, right? Kevin said, unabashed, laughing. Robert and I sighed in exasperation. We only need to stay until we find a new house. Please, we have no one else to turn to, the couple said, bowing their heads together. I think our expressions must have been complicated, but if they had nowhere to live, we had no choice. We agreed to let the couple temporarily stay in our house. However, we made them promise to leave within a month. Got it, Kevin said, still laughing, and went back to prepare to move their things. After they left, my mother-in-law sat silently, looking thoughtful. Robert and I assumed she was still in shock. The next day, the couple's stuff arrived right away. This much? Where should we put it all? We're in trouble. We might have to sell some of it or rent a locker, we said while discussing and moving Kevin's things. Then, my mother-in-law dropped a bombshell on us. I've been thinking, won't we be more secure in the future if Kevin's here? So, you freeloaders can leave, can't you? My husband and I were taken aback by her abrupt statement. If you insist, I can tolerate Robert staying, but I don't need a wife who can't do anything. Get a divorce. Then the space that Sandra was occupying can be used for all these packages, she demanded eagerly, her eyes shining, looking to my husband for agreement. What are you talking about? He reacted, completely astounded. Then, my brother-in-law and his wife arrived. My mother-in-law greeted them with joy. Although I was still shaken by her previous words, my husband decided to ignore them for the moment and asked his brother to deal with the packages. There are more than I thought. Try to reduce the number, rent a locker, or sell some if you have to, he said. Kevin glared at him. What are you talking about? These are important packages. How could I sell them? And what if someone steals them from a locker or they get damaged? Are you going to take responsibility, bro? My husband shook his head at his brother's selfish behavior. This is our house, you know. It's only natural that you should endure some inconvenience, right? If you don't like it, find a place to live quickly and leave. At that moment, my mother-in-law shouted, What are you talking about? Didn't I just say, if you two are not happy with Kevin and the rest, you can leave? You're basically freeloaders. You're not needed in this house. Kevin is trying to start a business, and all you two do is loaf around the house, doing so-called remote work. You're a nuisance. My mother-in-law said this as if it were her own house. My husband and I looked at each other in disbelief. My brother-in-law and his wife were surprised by her words, but then started to smirk. That might not be a bad idea, Mom. Yeah, it's a hassle to look for a place, so we could live here. So, sell this house to us, right, Carol? I feel uncomfortable with you two around, so it would be helpful if you sold this place to us, Kevin said. My husband and I were dumbfounded at their words. What nonsense are you? My husband began, but he was interrupted by my mother-in-law, who gloated, See, both Kevin and Carol are saying the same thing. So, what will you do, Robert? If you're going to divorce, you can stay here. She glared at me triumphantly. I braced myself to retaliate, but my husband spoke first. Don't you just say whatever you want? Why does Sandra have to leave? He said, red in the face with anger, raising his voice. Don't shout like that. It's better without a burden around, isn't it? My mother-in-law retorted. My husband responded in an exasperated tone, You don't understand anything. This is Sandra's house. At my husband's words, my mother-in-law, brother-in-law, and his wife gasped. My husband continued, adding to the tension. This is the house that Sandra bought for our life together. What? What are you saying? Isn't it the husband's job to buy the house? My mother-in-law said. There's no such rule. Moreover, Sandra covers all of Mom's allowance and living expenses. Sandra said she'd take on that burden because your pension is minimal, and it would be difficult for you to have financial freedom with just that, Robert said, glaring at his mother with an intense expression. Despite this, my mother-in-law seemed to disbelieve, looking at me and snickering. Unbelievable. Sandra just plays on the computer all day. She doesn't even do housework. Seriously, wasn't my allowance coming out of my pension? Otherwise, there's no way Sandra could afford to give me $500 a month. She continued, Sandra is the one managing my pension, isn't she? You might have told Robert otherwise, but I'm sure you're dipping into my pension. She puffed up her chest and glared at me. I glared back, not to be outdone. It's true. I've succeeded as a business owner. You're lying. Divorce this lying wife already. You should live here with me and Kevin and Carol. Besides, there's no proof that Sandra's earning money, she said. There is. Here it is, I said, pulling out my paycheck and showing it to her. The sight of it left my mother-in-law, Kevin, and his wife slack-jawed. We've not used any of Mom's pension since she moved in here. If Mom ever wanted to leave, Sandra has been managing it so she could live independently. But instead, Mom, you've been bossing Sandra around, interfering with her work. You're the problem. If you don't like Sandra, you should leave right now, Robert said. I don't believe any of this, my mother-in-law said. We don't mind if you and Kevin temporarily stay, but some patience should be expected. We didn't want you to live here in the first place. We only agreed because you begged us, Robert said, glaring at Kevin and his wife. Kevin and his wife broke out in a cold sweat, not used to Robert raising his voice. Just kidding, but you sure are earning a lot, huh? I wish you could teach me some business tricks, right, Carol? Yeah, well, it's true we were worried about living with our sister-in-law. It seems like she's a good person after all, Kevin said, smiling with his wife. But my mother-in-law was unyielding. Don't act so high and mighty. You're just a bum. Enough, Robert. You should leave too. You should go outside and see how harsh this world can be, she said, filled with conviction, refusing to listen to anything we said. Afterward, Robert and I sighed in disbelief, interrupting her. Well, if that's how you feel, we'll pack our things and move to a new house. You guys will be stuck with a mortgage, but if that's okay with you, don't come crying to us for help. If you insist, mother-in-law will leave. Even with a pension, maintaining your lifestyle will be challenging, but I guess that can't be helped, can it? At our words, my mother-in-law turned beet red and yelled at us to get out. Wait, you can't be serious. We don't have to do that, do we? Kevin said. Yes, if you two are here, we're safe, Carol added, trying to stop us. But my mother-in-law gave us a fierce look and said, Don't you dare talk back, Kevin. You're going to be a CEO, aren't you? I don't mind you using my pension, so just start a company and show us how successful you can become. I'll show you what happens when you defy us. Her words were filled with intensity. Hearing this, we decided it was best to no longer get involved with her or Kevin's family and left the house. Of course, the mortgage on the house remained, but we changed the ownership to Kevin's name. Some time had passed since then. While there was some residual dissatisfaction from that incident, having been freed from my mother-in-law's sarcasm, we resumed our normal routine. Just when we were working from home in our new apartment as usual, my mother-in-law called my husband, crying. Kevin has taken my pension and disappeared. He hasn't come back in a week. Carol and I are left alone in the house, and we're in trouble. Please help us, she wept. After my husband calmed her down, he asked why Kevin had gone missing. I gave all of my pension to Kevin for his startup, but he ended up spending it all on gambling. When I confronted him about it, he disappeared. She cried out desperately. Since she couldn't continue the conversation through her sobbing, the phone was handed to Carol. Could you please call us back? We can't live like this. Ever since Kevin failed his startup and sold the house, we were living and our parents have disowned us. My dad won't forgive us for selling that house. We haven't been able to reach either our dad or mom since, Carol pleaded. At the sight of them, my husband muttered, I knew it, in a disgusted tone. That's unfortunate, but don't involve us. We warned you when we left, didn't we? Even if you come crying to us, we won't help. You can report Kevin as missing to the police. It's none of our business, he said and hung up. I was shocked, but my husband said, They got what they deserved, and I agreed. After that, they called my husband's cell phone many times. When my husband, frustrated, answered the phone, Carol would cry about not knowing how to report Kevin as missing. We were surprised she didn't know and gave her advice to call the police. However, they still couldn't find Kevin. Just when we thought they might not find him, we heard that Kevin had been arrested for bank robbery in another state. Apparently, he did it to repay his debt. It seems it wasn't his first offense, and he would likely face actual jail time. Carol can't go back to her parents' home and is still living with my mother-in-law in that house. It's uncertain whether or not she will divorce Kevin. That's probably the least of her concerns right now. She registered with a temp agency and is struggling with her first job ever, but she's somehow making ends meet every day. As for my mother-in-law, Kevin took all of her pension, and now she has to repay his debt. She has also started working part-time to repay the debt. My husband and I express sympathy for my mother-in-law and sister-in-law's family, but we have made it clear that we have no intention of helping them, and we have cut off all communication. They must be tasting the harsh realities of life that my mother-in-law always talked about. Despite the changes since my mother-in-law moved in with us, my husband and I are glad that we have returned to our peaceful days.